Great pleasure to welcome back with us. Man has been with us a few times before. Always great to talk to him. He's the author of 13 consecutive New York Times bestsellers, and here's a new one out. It's called Damage. Great pleasure to welcome John Lescroart back with us today. How are you, John?
Great, Doug. How you doing?
Good to talk to you again. It's always fun to get a chance to talk to you when a new book comes out. You're very prolific, John.
It's kind of weird when I hear you say, 13 consecutive New York Times bestsellers. I'm going, who's he talking about?
That's not easy to do. That's like a sports record that may not be broken.
What is this, book number 22? I'm going, that's just not possible. It really is.
You're doing something right.
Every day and go to work. I don't know. And then every year it seems like a new book comes out. So
you got something going. Don't analyze it too much, right?
I'm not.
Well, I had a chance to get it and read through it a little bit, and obviously when we talk to you, we don't want to give away too much, but can you give a bit of a synopsis? I know in the past, for those who haven't been with us, your books take place pretty much out in the San Francisco Bay Area, right?
Pretty much. This is a pretty San Francisco-based book, yeah. The story is based actually on much more than any of my other books. This is based on a true story of a rapist murderer who was convicted back in 1998 and then appealed his conviction based on the fact that his victim's family wore buttons or badges during the trial with the victim's face on it. And the Ninth Circuit came out and said that, that would prejudice the jury against the defendant, and they sent him back to have a new trial. Now, fortunately, in real life, the U.S. Supreme Court stepped in and said, maybe not so much, and sent him back to prison. But I thought this book would start on the idea, wow, what if they let a guy like that out of jail and he got out? And what happens is damage starts to happen all over the place.
It creates the suspense, then people start to go missing, right?
Well, permanently missing. Yes.
That's right.
And not just permanently missing, the real story then becomes how are my heroes, Abe Glitsky and Wes Farrell, how are they going to get this guy back in jail where he belongs before too much more damage is done? And it becomes a very personal thing. One of the things that's so fun about it, though, to me, is that Glitsky and Farrell, who are both on the same side in the sense they're trying to get this guy back in jail, they are just completely at odds in terms of their agenda and how they're going about doing it. It's so fun, I think, to be inside their heads as they're going through what they're going through. You have one scene where you're totally on Glitsky's side and you see what he's doing and you understand him and he's trying to do the right thing, and then you flip over to Farrell and you see that Glitsky has just screwed him up completely and he hasn't meant to do it, and Farrell's trying to do what he's trying to do to make it right, and meanwhile people are getting killed on the streets of the city, and it's just it's a terrible thing, but it's a lot of fun, I think, to read.
I know I've asked you a similar question before, but again, for those who haven't been with us, when you write a novel like this, and you're familiar with some of the characters anyway, it's almost, I guess you have to think of yourself almost as an actor, right? Don't you have to kind of act it out in a way before you write it, or how do you go about it?
Well,
I mean, the scenes between the two characters, dialogue, that kind of thing.
I actually do feel like I inhabit their spirits or whatever it is as I'm writing them. I mean, you get to know their rhythms, especially their speaking rhythms, and they get so they are their own individuals as you start reading. And one of the things I tried to do when I started writing is I tried to get rid of what they call attribution. He said, she said.
Right.
In my earlier books, I made it a point to almost never use he said or she said. And I did that because I wanted the speech that they were using to be so immediately identifiable that nobody else could be the speaker. And it was a tremendous, I'd recommend that for all your listeners who are prospective writers, is it's a tremendous kind of a technique or exercise where you can really get so your people are recognizable by the words they say and the words they use.
You almost have to write in dialect, in a sense, don't you, when you do it that way?
Kind of. Everybody's got their own distinctive rhythms, and what you have to do is get sensitive enough to pick up that rhythm and somehow convey it across to the reader without having to say, Farrell said or Glitsky said. You just see it happening and unloading right in front of yourself. That's fun.
And when you write a book like this, John, I think you mentioned in the past that sometimes the characters take in a different direction than you originally thought. Did that happen with this book?
Well, this is not just sometimes this happens. I find that not only does it always happen, it happens all the time. It's really really unusual because you think you're in some kind of control, and really once you get these guys on the page or the women on the page, they do things that you go, wait a second. I mean, the great early twist in this book, which gives nothing away because it's so early in the book, but I have my character Glitsky go out to Roe Kirtley, who's the bad guy's house, to question him about, where he was when one of these crimes was committed. And, normally you would go, okay, well, what's Roe Kirtley going to do in response to that? Well, in response to that, he comes over to Glitsky's house, and he comments about how attractive Glitsky's kids are. And, I mean, it's one of the most threatening, horrifying, tense moments that you can imagine. And it really starts the book down a different path, but I never knew, when I outlined the book, I never knew that was going to happen. I didn't know that was going to be the start of what turns out to be rather a major conflagration of conflict.
Yeah, it's fascinating just to see how it works that way. And I know you say you plot out your plot. I mean, you write it out, I guess, in maybe 10 or 20 pages, right?
Outline.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's usually about maybe 15 to 20 pages long, and I feel like I'm going to get to where I'm got to be, but it almost never turns out that way. It's a fascinating process.
Almost like a jazz musician. There's an underlying melody, but you kind of go around it, Yeah.
Yeah, you see things starting to happen, and you go, well, that's just so interesting, I have to follow it. And then, I mean, we have a great moment in San Francisco last year that, I don't know if you heard about it, out in Sarasota, but we had a gun situation in very liberal San Francisco, so this is really weird. It's a very conservative thing to have happened. But there were these kind of gun meetings at Starbucks coffee shops.
Mm-hmm.
And people would come with their guns because it's legal to carry a gun as long as it's not hidden in San Francisco and as long as it's not loaded. And this was one of those internet inspired kind of a rave kind of a thing that suddenly guys were showing up, 50, 100 people were showing up at Starbucks carrying weapons. And, this is real life. And I said, you know what, that's just in the book.
Yeah.
That's just kind of happened.
So you pick scenes around town that you might pick up and find a way to get it in the book.
I wouldn't have thought to put that in the outline, and then suddenly it became actually a major plot point in the book.
That's great. Well, the book is called Damage. It just comes out as we tape this on January 4th. John, give out your website. People can get a hold of you or the book.
Yeah, I have a website. It looks like John Lescroart. My name is pronounced Lescroart, but it looks like Lescroart. And my website is just johnlescroart.com. And I also have a Facebook that you can reach right through that website. And I invite everybody to come to it and say hi.
Great. John, we look forward to talking to you when the next book comes out, which might be next week. Or maybe a few months.
Well,
John, appreciate you taking the time again, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.